Hello and welcome back to Conquest Creations. In today's video, Games Workshop has dropped another lot of news related to the Middle-earth strategy battle game that I am very excited to dive into. Now, I've been doing a little bit of this news style content recently, and I just want to say that this content is not replacing any of our regular battle reports. They are all on the way, just like normal. So if you're only here for the battle reports, don't worry, these are not taking the place of them. We're just putting out more content. And secondly, if you're here just for the news and you don't really care about my thoughts on it, totally fine. There's a link to the article down below in the description. In these videos, I want to actually add value. So instead of just reading the news to you, I want to give you my thoughts and discuss how I think it's going to impact our games. All right, let's get into this and see what happened. Firstly, last night, I dropped a new video with my 10 predictions on what's going to be changing in the game. 2 hours later, Games Workshop dropped this article, which reveals a little bit of what's coming. It's definitely not the whole picture, but that video wasn't entirely invalidated. I think that it still warrants being up because there's a lot of stuff that they don't talk about, but it was not fantastic timing. Okay, let's have a look at this article. So it is The Road Goes Ever On and On, the next edition of the Middle-earth strategy battle game. Fantastic. Okay, so we get a little introduction. Cool. Don't care about that. Now, in the next edition, it says this new edition is going to focus on the Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. So my guess is that the new starter kit is going to be new plastic kits for Rohan and the Dunlendings. It says this is an incredibly exciting prospect. I agree. It's the first movie we've been able to work on since the Hobbit motion picture trilogy. We can't go into too many details yet, more in the coming weeks. You'll find a taste of what you can expect from the new edition down below. So, starter kit, I think that's guaranteed almost to be War of the Rohirrim, and let's have a look at what they're saying is going to change in the game, or what we can expect from this new edition. Now, importantly, it says, the entire core rules have been rewritten in an effort to streamline and modernize both the way the rules are presented and the game itself. Clearer language, consistent terminology, makes the rules easy to follow. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that's a little bit of a nothing statement because I was definitely expecting that to occur anyway. But obviously great just to, get that clarified. I think a little bit of modernization is great. More modern games generally are more streamlined. There's some needless complexity removed. So it makes sense and it's great to see that coming. Okay. And then it comes into this from games developer Jay. Now Jay has won the World Championship several times. I think the game is in great hands with him. So let's see what he had to say. There's been a number of things we wanted to tackle, but the important thing is that for those among us who've been playing for many years, the new edition will still play like the same game we know and love. Now, I know there was a little bit of people concerned that this could be as big a change as when Warhammer Fantasy turned into Age of Sigmar. There's guarantees that's not the case. It's the same game. It's just going to be a new revised version. I think the difference between this new edition and the current edition is going to be the same difference between the Hobbit edition and the current edition. So decently large sweeping changes, but 100% still the same game. Okay, now it says, we are always listening to the fans of the Middle-earth strategy battle game and what they have to say, which is really interesting. I do wonder if they get community feedback. I have zero contact with Games Workshop. I'd obviously love to hear from them. If anyone has a connection, let me know. At the moment, I've just emailed their customer service line being like, hey, if you wanna send some early release stuff to anyone, I'm your guy, but I'm not sure if that's going anywhere. But yeah, I would be really interested to know more about what community interaction they have. And then they say, and much of the work that's gone into developing the new edition has been to bring your feedback to the game where we can. Now, I do apologize if there's a little bit of background noise. We are unfortunately losing the studio on the 31st of October because there's a new landlord coming in. He's moving his business in. There's a little bit of renovations. So if there's any background noise, there's a little bit of that. I do have a video talking about the plan for what happens when we lose the studio. But basically, at this stage, I've got no idea. I'm still figuring it out. So yeah, we're working on it. If you want to support the channel, make sure we can keep doing this and find a new studio space or alternative arrangement. Hit that subscribe button. We also have a Patreon, or we make terrain, STL files, all that stuff. That's enough of that. Let's get back into what we're actually talking about now. So it says there's no major changes to the core mechanics of the game, which have stayed the same since the first release back in 2001. Totally true, and it's fantastic that they're saying that they'll build on the solid foundations of the past. I'm a big fan of that. I want them to stay true to what they've done before. Now, goes on to say there aren't some minor changes, there's always room for improvement. Now, I do agree. When they first announced that there was a new edition, I was kind of like, oh, but what are you going to change? The game's so good already. And then over the past few weeks, I've kind of been, well, not few weeks, over the past week, I've been thinking about what that could actually mean. And you can check out last night's video, which is linked in the description down below and probably in a little pop-up thing in the corner that talks about some of the things that I'm keen to see changed. Okay, we've spent a great deal of time working on this edition, and I do believe that because it's been pretty slow in between releases, I do presume they've had a lot of time to mull over this. Now, even if it isn't just active time of, we've got 40 hours this week working on it, having, I think, time spread out over a long period of time allows you to evaluate your thoughts, I think, better for something like this. So I'm hoping that, if they've only been doing a little bit of it each week, but for, 2 years, instead of trying to rush through it all in 6 months, I think that's going to result in a much better quality product. Okay. We got a picture of the 3 trolls. Cool. It says, in this edition, the team have also taken the opportunity to streamline and remove as much unnecessary complexity as possible to create a smoother experience for players. Okay, so it says, in the way charts that have different values for different obstacles and special strikes are good examples of this. So at the moment, with an in the way, if you're behind a fortification, it's a 5 up in the way. If you're behind a flimsy fence, it's a 3 up in the way. And that's kind of cool, but as someone who super loves terrain, it's 99% it's just a 4 up. That's not rules as written, that's just how the community plays it. And if that's how the community plays it, it makes sense just to simplify it like that. So I think that's good. And special strikes are a good example of this. They further go on to explain that rolling 4 up thing that I was just talking about. And special strikes, on the other hand, we've found many people simply, when interacting with or trying to bend them in a game, yep. So people are kind of taking advantage of them how they're not intended. So all hand weapons are now the same. Okay, so that reads as special strikes basically gone. And I think in a simple version, that is true. I think that obviously it says all hand weapons are the same. That's great. But what I do think is going to happen, because I think some of the special strikes are genuinely interesting. I do like piercing strike in certain situations. I really like bash. Stun feels kind of bad, but there can be a place for it. So what I think is going to happen is the special strikes that they like and they want to use are going to turn into special rules that certain models have access to. For example, I think that a Grimhammer will maintain the ability to bash and piercing strike, because I think that's really cool, but a Hobbit with an axe won't be piercing striking. Okay, I think that's a great improvement. Now, next it says there is a greater focus on narrative armies. There is a greater focus on narrative armies than before, especially in match play. Great. I want the match play to be thematic armies. I hate seeing that soup list or super unthematic stuff being at the top of the tables. So, the Middle-earth strategy battle game centers around key storylines from the movies and books, and allowing players to recreate those scenes and armies on the tabletop is a key part of the game experience. I completely agree. All of the armies that I've been building recently are thematic because that's what I think is the coolest. So it's great that they're really reiterating that that is the point here. It says every profile in the game is split into a series of army lists, each designed on it to focus on a particular scene, battle, or group of characters from the movies or books, each with their own flavorful special rules. The aim is to have every army feel like an iconic scene and evoke the wonderful world of Middle-earth. Okay, I'm going to read the next little bit before I dive into that, because Jay explains, Jay the rules writer. The current edition introduced legendary legions, special army lists that represent key armies and events from the pages on the screen. Okay, yep, makes sense. These proved to be wildly popular with fans, so we've taken this concept one step further. So pretty much everything's a legendary legion. Now, every army list will be represented in the same manner as legendary legions, ensuring that every army fits the theme of Middle-earth. There are loads of these to choose from, and we've taken great care to make sure that if there is a scene in the movies showcasing characters fighting alongside each other, then there is appropriate army list to represent that on the tabletop. I really like this approach. Now, I did talk about this in my video where I was talking about predictions, and this is one that they basically blew out of the water 2 hours after my video went live. But everything being a Legendary Legion, I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to talk about the pros and the cons of this. The pros are it's going to encourage more thematic play, which I really like. There's going to be scenes that would have been yellow alliances that are now just fully playable within like within normal rules, and they'll get extra flavorful special rules. The cons of this is it is a restriction of freedom. Now, I think player agency is really important. It is a double-edged sword. That's both a pro and a con. I don't like playing against Soup List, so this obviously drastically reduces that. But it also means that there are some niche themes, like the time that the Rohan helped the Dwarves slay a dragon, that are much more difficult to do now, or might just not be possible within standard competitive rules. Now, you can always do whatever you want when you're playing casually, and I find that a lot of the people who want to do these super niche fun themes are playing casually. So great, nothing's changed there. Now, it says, for players that like to find the most potent combinations, fear not. Okay, I kind of wish they were afraid, because I don't like the sound of that. Many of these item lists will still provide ample opportunities for you to try out combinations and see what you can come up with. Okay, so I think a lot of these are going to have a lot of options. I think that there's going to be a generic like legendary legion for each army that you can play pure. So there's just a Minas Tirith one with like all of the Minas Tirith options, or it's going to restrict the timelines a little bit, but I imagine that all of the regular army lists are going to be kind of untouched by this. Now Jay continues, this isn't to say that every profile has drastically changed, sorry. Before that, as a part of the greater focus on narrative, every profile has been reworked and many characters have received updated or new abilities to better represent them on the battlefield. Cool. Jay continues, this isn't to say every profile has drastically changed, more that we've taken the opportunity to rebalance many of them, add extra flavor, or simply tweak them to make them work better, to represent them on the battlefield. Yep. And they'll function the same way, they'll just be tweaked. So I think that this is confirmation that this is basically just a big balance patch as well across all of the models. So there's a few that I'm expecting to get hit really hard by this, and that's something that I'll dive into more in another video, either on the Patreon, or you might see it on Mountain Goat Gaming, because I'll collaborate with Sean on that. But some of the profiles that I want to see change the most, the number one is Gandalf, both Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. Just make them both way better, because Gandalf's so cool, and in my opinion, he's really not that great. So I want to see him absolutely juiced. And then I think that we're going to see Azog and Bog go down in their fight values a little bit, so that they're not better at fighting than Aragons, things like that. At the same time, I think that Aragon's going to get better at fighting. So pretty sweeping changes. That's a whole nother topic of what I think is going to change in the profiles. So let's keep going through this article. It says, one thing we've looked at is the distribution in fight values. Fantastic. There's a lot of models in the 3 to 6 range, making it super congested, and they're going to be spreading them out more. So it says the top of fight value 3 will see themselves bump up to fight value 4. The top of fight value 4 will see them bump up to fight value 5, and so on. It says this is applied to both heroes and warriors, so some fan favorites will be more potent in the next edition. Okay, that's great. I want the fan favorite characters to be the best characters. I'm expecting Witch King going up to fight 6, Aragon getting, fight 8 maybe, fight 9, anything to make him like way more scary would be absolutely awesome. At the same time, I think regular elves are going to get to fight 6 as well. While things like Easterlings with all their 5 value upgrades will stay on fight 5. And then maybe some of the regular warriors of Minas Tirith can go up to fight 4. And then, orcs and things like that staying on fight 3. There will also be a new intelligence characteristic, which will work basically how courage currently does for certain things. So to spot an invisible ring bearer, you need intelligence. Okay. And it says no more blood crazy Uruk-hai berserkers suddenly being experts in spotting invisible models. Now this is really interesting because currently there are very, very few situations like this. There's invisible models, and that's all I can think of off the top of my head, but maybe there's more. So to add a whole stat just for that seems a little bit silly. My guess is there's going to be a lot more stuff interacting with this, and my guess, they don't go any further than this in this article, is that intelligence is going to interact with magical powers. So maybe to cast a magical power, you take an intelligence test or something, or to resist it, you take a test, or it's going to be easier to cast a magical power against something with lower intelligence. That's my guess. Obviously, that's speculation. But it doesn't make sense to add a whole stat just for this one small thing with invisible models. So I think it's going to be pretty broad across everything, that we're going to see more intelligence-related things. It also means that Hill Trolls, which got released, who they said have the special Hill Troll intelligence, we'll obviously have a rule that interacts with this intelligence stat. Okay, next up, it says, finally, we've added a number of new thematic special rules to various profiles, helping to invoke their characters from the films and make them feel even more like they do on screen. Sam can now use his frying pan in combat, Lurtz can shrug off wounds, Isildur can wield the shards of Narsil should Elendil will be slain. Awesome, I think this is great. I'm presuming these are all going to be really themey, and it's just great to see more stuff like this. Between the old edition and the current edition, a ton of stuff like this was put in. For example, Grishnak, who used to just be an old captain with an extra point of might, got the Backstabber special rule. Gorbag, who used to be identical to Grishnak, got his Orcish Brawler special rule, which completely makes them feel like their own characters and a lot more fun to play. So I think they're just taking this another step further. Now, I have seen people being like, oh, but Sam's lost special strikes. He can't, bash or stun with this frying pan. And obviously the frying pan is going to be getting its own special rules, and that might be the ability to bash or stun, but it's going to be baked into that profile instead of just a generic special strike across the board. Okay, but we've got a lot to cover here. It says, what does this mean for Middle-earth? Upon the release of new editions, 2 supplements will be available, Armies of Lord of the Rings and Armies of the Hobbit. Now that is what we currently have. Each of these will focus solely on the heroes, villains, warriors, creatures, and armies from their respective films. Films. But what about anything that isn't directly in the films we hear you cry? Fear not, young Hobbit. An additional supplement will be released a short while later entitled Armies of Middle-earth, which focuses on any profiles that do not feature in the films themselves. Writing everything has been a Mumwick-sized task, fair enough, and they want it to be as good as possible, so they're happy to delay it. Okay, a little bit to unpack there. These books are specifically the films, so I think the Armies of the Hobbit is pretty unchanged. Armies of Lord of the Rings, things like Arnor, Angmar, Khazad-dûm, what else off the top of my head? Farharad, Barad, no, we definitely see Barad, Khan. Okay, there's a few things that I can definitely see being their own book. Arnor isn't really like the Lord of the Rings era, so it makes sense to be its own kind of section. And obviously there's more to talk about that with the supplement, but just as an example. So really interesting change there. Splitting out the books, it's unfortunate. I would prefer fewer books just because it's easier for everyone to get into the game when there's fewer books. But with the amount of legendary legions I'm anticipating them adding, just to make the books more concise, I kind of understand this. And look, if they have more time to work on it, I think that's always going to lead to a higher quality end result. So that's fine with me. Okay, what comes up next? We have Legacies of Middle-earth. Now, this is a big controversial one. We've been going strong for 20 years now, and it's resulted in a lot of profiles and miniatures. Now, to continue supporting the game and bring you amazing new miniatures, some older profiles have to make way in order for exciting miniatures to flourish. There's going to be a free PDF with the Legacies of Middle-earth that will come out at the same time as Armies of Middle-earth, so a little bit after the original release. And it's going to contain all those profiles. They do say that it will not be legal for official Games Workshop events and tournaments. It does say tournament organizers are still absolutely welcome to allow them in their own independent tournaments and gaming weekends. Okay. So basically this means that they're cycling out some older miniatures, and this has happened with 40k, Age of Sigmar, Horus Heresy, a ton of stuff. Games Workshop's done it before, and it's unfortunate, but I understand it's necessary. You only have so much space in a warehouse, and when something sells very, very rarely, it's difficult to justify keeping it existing, and it kind of trims the fat. There's some profiles that you just never see really used, so it makes sense just to cull them. It is unfortunate. I would like to keep them, but I completely understand why they're doing it. Now, there's going to be a whole video topic on what I think will be culled in the Legacies of Middle-earth, but it's also important to keep in mind that tournament organizers can still choose to make them available. So I think that's going to be an interesting point of contention for the community if a tournament is Legacies allowed or Legacies not allowed. I don't like fracturing any tournament-based communities, but we'll see. It might just be across the board that yeah, they're totally fine, keep them coming. Some of the big things that I'm expecting to see removed, might be a controversial one. Wouldn't be surprised to see Black Numenorians turn into a legacy. They're wildly popular and not ever seen in the movies and briefly talked about in the books, So I'm expecting that they're going to be a big one on the chopping block, and that might be a little bit controversial. Feel free to leave your comments down below on what you think is going to go to legacies and what you hope to stay in the core rules. And then we can talk about that in a future video. Might not be on this channel, might be on the Patreon, might be on Mountain Goat Gaming, but at some point it's going to come out. Okay, next up we have current Middle-earth supplements, and this is a pretty big one. Comprehensive update to the game. Current supplements will not be valid. So it's War in Gondor, War in Rohan, Quest of the Ringbearer, all of those invalidated. So the next thing we have in front of me here is current Middle-earth supplements. And this is a sad one as well. It is the unfortunate death in need of progress. So all previous Middle-earth supplements are no longer valid for matched play. And because they're updating all the profiles, this is no surprise at all. In the current supplements, there's probably 10 or 20 pages of the full 100-page book that are relevant to matched play. They include the new profiles and the new legendary legions, and those are not valid. The good thing is I think that everything that already has been released, like they're not going to make a new Quest of the Ringbearer, they're not going to make a new War in Rohan. I think all of that is going to be rolled in to the new Armies of Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and Middle-earth. So while these books are invalid, I think that they're like superseded because all of their content's being included in the new books. And of course, these are scenario guides. So the Quest of the Ringbearer for all the narrative scenarios is still 100% relevant. And I'll still be doing that. Don't worry, that's on its way. All right, next one is Rise of Amar, and this one is a little bit unfortunate. The Rise of Amar supplement is coming out, but it's going to have a very short shelf life. So basically, they've said you can get it to wrap up your collection, but the match play rules in it will not be valid for anything more than a couple months. So basically, this is something people are afraid of, but they've been super transparent about it. It's obviously wasn't their plan. Things got delayed because it's like literally the worst way to market anything is say, hey, basically don't buy this product. But that's what the situation is. So if you don't want to get Rise of Amar, just do not buy this book. And they've been very transparent about it. I don't think they even care about the sales stats for this book. They know they're going to have a ton left on the shelf because, yeah, it's being invalidated straight away. If someone buys it, totally up to them. So at least they've still given us that option. And it's better that some of these Rise of Amar books can go into collections instead of just all being thrown in the bin because they're most likely already printed. It does also say that there'll be a free Armies of Arnor and Angmar PDF available to download on the launch of the new edition. And to finish it off, there is no August FAQ. They do 2 FAQs a year, and they're not doing one for August. That makes a lot of sense because there's a new edition coming. So that is all wrapped up. Now that is all the new news from Games Workshop. This has been a decently long video. I'm really excited about all this stuff, so I will be making videos about all of this. There's a ton of content to come, but as I've said before, don't worry. There is still the regular scheduled battle reports coming their way. These aren't instead of, these are in addition to. Now, if you like the channel, you want to support what we do, feel free to check out our Patreon, check out our web store where we have some awesome wargaming scenery STL files, or just leave a comment and subscribe. With all these comments, I'm absolutely loving interacting with you guys. I'm spending hours and hours responding and reading to all of them, which is a lot of fun for me. Maybe not the best use of business time, but I'm doing it anyway. All right, this has been Conquest Creations. Thank you for watching.